Okay, so here's the thing. I learned astrology to see if it's real or not. And I did this because whenever astrology used to come up, I always used to think, how can planets spinning billions of miles away decide what happens in our lives? Where are these predictions coming from? What are these words? And can chanting a mantra or feeding a cow really change my life? I mean, I love animals, but it sounds like a stretch even for me. And yet, millions rely on it for big decisions, investing time, energy, and money. So, the big question was, is there any logic behind it, or any plausible hypothesis, or it's just a centuries old superstition? So, I studied astrology from a scientific lens, not to prove or disprove anything, but then to understand and learn from it. And what I realized was it might actually be true, and I think we shouldn't dismiss it yet. I went in expecting one thing, but what I found, let's just say you'll never see astrology the same way ever again. If you've ever been curious or even skeptical, stick around because the next 10 minutes will surprise you. Let's dive into astrology decoded. Okay, let's do a very simple thought experiments and let's assume that astrology works and it's real. So, what could be the basic assumptions that could make it work? The first assumption is very basic. The universe should be a very deeply interconnected system, and a very small change in one part of the universe should affect another part of the universe, because science says that energy in a system should always be conserved. Astrology works on the principle that planets moving up in the sky affects our lives here. So the second assumption is also very straightforward, that every planet that is moving up in the sky should emit some form of energy that is interacting with us, our bodies, and more specifically our nervous system and our brains. The third assumption could be that these planets moving up in the sky leave some sort of imprint on the person that could dictate their personality, their decision making ability, their intelligence, so on and so forth. And finally, if all this is true, it should be verifiable by carefully designed scientific studies. And now that we have all the pieces of the puzzle together, let's see if any of this is true. Okay, look at this. You see this? This is the sound of the universe. And we captured this on 14 September 2016. It was a crucial day for the entire scientific community, because this is where we got to know that gravity isn't actually a force like we read in our classrooms. And you see, this is the key to understanding how our universe is so interconnected. So then, what is gravity if not a force? To explain this, let me ask you a very simple question. Imagine you have a ball in your hand at XYZ coordinate, and let's say you throw it up in the air and it falls back in your hand again at the same exact coordinate. Do you think the ball is at the same place? Well, you might think yes, because from your perspective, the ball landed at the exact same spot. But think about it from a person sitting in the outer space. From their perspective, the earth has moved. Although slightly, the earth has moved and the coordinates have changed. And interestingly, if you ask both these people what was the exact time when the ball came back to the person's hand, both of them would report a slightly different time. So here's the thing, observation basically changes a lot of things, and this is what we call in physics the frame of a reference. Basically, from what perspective are you viewing a certain event? So based on this, our theorists and physicists came up with this idea that our reality isn't actually a 3D world, it's more of a 4D world. And I know it's a tough pill to swallow, because honestly it's very difficult to imagine. So think of it like a video that you would generally play on your phone, and in that video the characters, that's us, and we in real life perceive everything in 3D. But as the video plays on, The time moves forward, and that time, that's our fourth dimension. So, to summarize this, we perceive our world in 3D and we experience our reality in time. This is what scientists call the space-time continuum. And honestly, it's very difficult to visualize. So, for now, let's think of it like a 4D grid that exists all around us. And it all makes practical sense because without time, place, and an observer, an event would never actually take place. And what's really interesting is that in the year 1915, about a century ago, Einstein predicted that gravity isn't actually a force. It's basically a curvature in the space-time continuum caused by the mass of a planet. And as these planets move around, they create ripples in the space-time continuum, as it happens when we throw a stone in a pond. And this sound you heard, this is actually two black holes colliding in the universe, and the ripples were captured by us here on Earth. If you think about it, it seriously proves how interconnected our universe is. I mean, just simply think about the fact that planets moving in the outer space are creating ripples in the space-time, and that essentially is changing the very fabric of our reality and way we perceive it. And that's huge. Okay, so these waves are interconnected and there's a transfer of energy happening every single second. But are these waves even strong enough to leave any impact on us? Like, it took a huge collision of two black holes for us to even capture it. And this is what Wikipedia has to say. These gravitational waves are very weak, and these are like many 6 trillion times weaker. And the amplitude is in the range of 10 to the power minus 20. And to imagine this, think of your hair strand. It's more than 16 times smaller than that, and it's hugely impossible to imagine. So, do these waves affect us? And the short answer is we don't know, because honestly, if they were strong enough, we would pop, because it stretches space and time. So you die stretching in slow motion, and you'll know Einstein was right. You see, these waves start off strong as they start at the source, and as they keep going through space, time, and us, they keep getting weaker. So the question is, where is this energy going? Because ideally, the energy in a system should always be conserved. So the hypothesis is, as it passes through any matter, it changes its very nature by the virtue of changing its space and time. And as it passes through us, it may leave some sort of an imprint on us. Although very small, it may not affect our bodies, but it may affect our minds, and hence changing our psyche. Like when we hear voices from our parents, from our loved ones, music, or even when we receive light, all these things are changing our lives in a very subtle way that we don't even realize it. And you know what? All these are waves. And you see, science has proved that all these waves affect our psyche. So maybe that's what gravitational waves do. They affect our psyche. And if this is true, then our first and second assumption is also true, and that means there's a possibility that we can actually predict past, present, and future. And if scientific experiments can prove that astrology works, then this could be a empirical evidence showing that gravitational waves do affect human minds. But does any experiment prove that astrology works? Coming up in the next video. So in the next video, we'll be exploring the fascinating world of scientific experiments done on astrology till date. And we'll see their successes, their failures, their challenges, and what makes it all so complicated. Plus, I'll be sharing my own personal experience with astrology, where I tried predicting things, the surprising things I learned, and personally how it challenged my own belief systems. So watch out for the next video and subscribe for more.